Ezekiel 47, Yehwa 4:7. Even as the sun comes up, and maybe it will get above freezing today. Little buddy heater on high over here, doing its job. Oofda. Yehwa 47, continuing, and Yah's will be done, completing the book of befuddlement today. Ezekiel 47, and he, the man with the stick, turned me back to the door of the house, the temple, and look, water was flowing from under the threshold of the house towards the east, for the house faced east, and the water was flowing from under the right side of the house, from the south of the slaughter place. And he led me out by way of the north gate, and took me round on the outside to the outer gate facing east, and look, water trickling out on the right side. And the man went out on the east with the line in his hand, and he measured 1,000 cubits, 1,500 feet-ish. Now this guy's cubit's 22 inches, so 2,200-ish feet. And he made me pass over into water to the ankles. And he measured 1,000 and made me pass over into water to the knees. And he measured 1,000 and made me pass over water to the loins. And he measured 1,000, a stream that I was unable to pass over, for the water had risen, water to swim, a stream that is not passed over. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen this? And he led me and brought me back to the bank of the stream. And when I returned, then look, along the bank of the stream were many trees on one side and the other. And he said to me, These waters are flowing towards the eastern country, to go down into the Arabia. Yeah, remember where Jerusalem is? To the south and the southeast is desert. And you go far enough southeast-ish from Jerusalem, you end up in Saudi Arabia. Not exactly known for its lush agriculture. And go down into the Arabia and enter the sea, being made to flow into the sea, and the waters shall be healed. And it shall be that every swarming creature, wherever the stream goes, shall live, and there shall be very many fish, for these waters shall go there, and they are healed. And wherever the stream flows, all shall live. And it shall be that fishermen stand along it from En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, being places for spreading their nets. Their fish is to be the same kind of fish as the great sea, very many. Its swamps and its marshes shall not be healed, and they shall be given over to salt. And by the bank of the stream on both sides grow all kinds of trees, used for food, whose leaves do not wither and fruit do not fail. They bear fruit every new moon, because their waters flow from the set-apart place. And their fruit shall be for food, and their leaves for healing. New thought beginning in 13, so let's deal with this water real quick. This is healing, living water flowing literally from the temple, outward from there, healing all of the land around it. This is an amazing prophecy. And it's echoed by our friend Yochanan, John, the Revelator, in Revelation 22, which hopefully I can turn to with these cool guy gloves on. Revelation 22. And he, the angel speaking to John, showed me a river of water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of Elohim and the Lamb, the temple. In the middle of its street, on either side of the river, was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each yielding its fruit every month, every new moon. And the leaves of the trees were for healing of the nations. And no longer shall there be any curse, and the throne of Elohim and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. Okay, so there's our two witnesses, Old Testament and New Testament. In the mouths of two or three let a thing be established. So, and I've read every word of Revelation on camera, so if you have questions about what does Bear, what do you believe this thing means in Revelation? Go watch that video. We've done Revelation chapter by chapter painstakingly. It's in the New Testament Bible playlist here on this channel. But John's vision that John had, as stated previously numerous times, there's very few things in John's vision that are unique. It's more like John has a conglomerate, a tapestry of visions predicated on the visions of Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah and Zechariah and Amos and Joel and Haggai and Habakkuk and everybody who had come before him. And so here yet again in Revelation 22, we see John is having this vision of this water flowing through the throne of Elohim. Ezekiel has this vision of this water flowing out from the house. Well, the house, the temple, where does Yah sit? Where did Yah sit inside of the tabernacle? He's seated between the two cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, in the temple. Okay, so these things track. Now, verse 10, and it shall be that fishermen stand along it from En Gedi to En Eglaim. I did a modicum of research on this. En Gedi means fountain or spring of the kid, like a baby goat. It's kind of in the Judean wilderness outside of Jerusalem on the west coast of the Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea. En Eglaim means the spring or the fountain of two calves, which is south of Sodom and Gomorrah on the Dead Sea. So both of these are places on the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea has a salt content of 30 to 35%. So therefore, no life can live in it. It's not just salt water, it's incredibly salty salt water. So there's going to be so much water flowing. Now, this is me speaking, interpreting what the Bible says. There will be so much healing water flowing from the temple of Yah, the throne of Yah, that it waters down that salt in the Dead Sea to where it can now sustain life again. And the fish that are in it will be like the fish of the Great Sea. So this is a saltwater sea now, but it can sustain life. Like, what are saltwater fish? Tuna, or I don't know what else. I'm not much of a fisherman. My wife's way better at catching fish than I am. We have a very simple rule. If it has fur or feathers, I'll kill it. If it has fins and scales, you kill it. She's way better at that than I am. So these healing waters are going out, watering trees as they go, for food, for fruit, and their fruit shall be for food, and the leaves for healing. That sounds a lot like the Garden of Eden, doesn't it? Eden. Alright, so if we go to Paleo-Hebrew, we have a dalet. So there's no vowels in written Paleo-Hebrew and Archaic Hebrew. No vowels. We have a dalet, and we have a nun. So dalet means gateway or pathway, and the nun can mean righteousness or kings, which equates kingship to righteousness. Imagine that. The pathway of kings, the pathway, the gateway of righteousness. Sounds like a restoration here, doesn't it? Back to Eden, the pathway of righteousness, where we have these trees for food and for healing. And I could jump in a massive rabbit hole about what is considered food today versus what food actually is. But suffice it to say, like, eating food directly from the tree is going to be way higher quality food, way better food than the stuff that you get at the grocery store. Verse 13. Thus said the Master Yahweh, this is the border by which you inherit the land, according to the 12 tribes of Israel, 2 portions for Joseph. We have a restoration here in 47 and 48 of the inheritance of the land. Part of that is the regathering of the tribes back to Jerusalem, which is prophesied over and over again. Isaiah, Jeremiah, now Ezekiel. We'll see this over and over again throughout the minor prophets. The 3 major prophets are considered Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. And now we are getting into once we complete Ezekiel, we'll have Daniel, and then minor prophets. What are considered minor prophets, mostly because their books are shorter. But this concept of the restoration of the 12 tribes of Israel returning to the promised land, Zion, Jerusalem, Canaan, pick your poison, pick your term. We see this here in Ezekiel 47. And you shall inherit it, each one the same as his brother. For I lifted my hand in an oath to give it to your fathers, and this land shall fall to you as an inheritance. Malachi 3 verse 6, I'm the Lord Yahweh Sabaoth, I change not. So Ezekiel is prophesying about end times here, and Yah is saying, I swore that I would give this to your fathers as an inheritance. That still stands. If that still stands, how many other things has Yah said in the Old Testament that still stand? Spoiler alert, the answer is all of them. Because his word will not return to him void, and he does not change. Which begs the question, if Messiah is Yah made flesh, and Yah doesn't change, how does one square the false doctrine of the law was done away with because of Jesus? Because that's not what Matthew 5:17 says, does it? I came to complete, embody. The Greek word is plerao. It means to embody. For truly, truly, until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot, not one tittle shall fall from this Torah till all be done. And originally, in Aramaic, it didn't say jot, because there's no J in Hebrew or Aramaic. It said yod, not one yod, which is the first letter of Yah's name, the first letter of Yeshua's name, and it means works, shall fall from this Torah till all be done. So, restoration of the inheritance. For I lifted my hand in an oath to give it to your fathers, and this land shall fall to you as your inheritance. And this is the border of the land on the north, from the great sea, the way of Hethlon, as one goes to Sephdad, Hamath, Berotat, Sibarim, which is between the borders of Damasek and the borders of Hamat, Hatzar Hatikan, which is on the border of Havan. And the border shall be from the sea of Hatzar Anan, the border of Damasek, and the north towards the north is the border of Hamath. This is the north side. And the east side is between Haran, Damasek, and Gilead, and the land of Israel, the Jordan. From the border to the eastern side of the sea you are to measure. This is the east side. And the south side to the south, from Tamar to the waters of Meribah by Kadesh, along the Wadi to the great sea. This is the south side towards the south. And the west side is the great sea, from the border to the point opposite Hamat. This is the west side. And you shall divide this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. And it shall be that you divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves, and for the strangers who sojourn in your midst, and who bear children among you. And they shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who bear children among you. Israel's getting their land back. There are still others here, but they are the stranger who dwells amongst Israel. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we can see in Revelation that there is this great city, Jerusalem, but outside of it are the others. There are still people there that aren't necessarily Yah's people. Well, what's going on there? Well, in the millennial reign, what is the purpose of the millennial reign? Messiah is back as the righteous king, Mashiach ben David, who restores the Father's people to the Father by removing their sin. Sin is lawlessness. And there's temple service, and Messiah is the high priest, and Yah is the temple. We're worshiping at Yah, in Yah. Are you in Christ, brother? We're worshiping in Yah. So what's the point of the millennial reign? To teach these people the Torah, to teach them what it means to have Christ indwelt in them. Here's some mental gymnastics, spiritual gymnastics for you. If Christ is Yah, which he is, And he is the Word, the Logos, made flesh. And the word prior to Matthew chapter 1, every time you see it in the Old Testament, it means the Torah. He is the Torah made flesh. And there's Proverbs about this, that before the world was, I was. Before the foundations of the earth were laid, I was. And I is speaking of wisdom, which is equated to Torah in the Proverbs. The Torah was before anything else was. Yeshua was before anything else was. The physical manifestation of the Father in his Torah, his laws, his instructions were before we were. So then Yeshua comes and there's no sin in him. And we know from 1 John 3 verse 4 that sin is lawlessness. So there's no lawlessness in Yeshua, aka he never broke the Torah. And he atoned for your sin, your breaking of the Torah. And we know from Isaiah that your sins, your lawlessness, your Torahlessness have created a separation between you and Yah. And that sin, lawlessness, cannot exist in the presence of Yah. What are we doing in the millennial reign? We're teaching Torah to those who were found righteous by their works. Behold, I come swiftly to reward each man according to his works. We're also teaching the heart condition, the love of Christ, the love of Yah to these people. And see, it's like a three-legged stool. I've talked about this before. And I apologize, I'm off script. I never script any of these. I just go where the Spirit leads. The church has the Spirit, and they have Messiah, but they don't have Torah. Judaism, fervent Jews, not secular Jews, not people group, nation state Jews, not Reform Jews, not Talmudic rabbinic Judaism, because that's all based upon the Babylonian Talmud. You want to talk about false doctrine? Yeah, which is beware the leaven of the Pharisees. Why was Messiah, if Messiah came to restore the Torah, which he did, why was he rebuking the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Because their law is not Yah's law. Their law is man-made doctrines and dogmas. Read Colossians 2 again. We talked about in the last video. Their doctrines and dogmas don't matter. That's what was nailed to the stauros, to the stake, was their man-made religious BS. The Father's perfect law stands forever until heaven and earth pass away, and they have not. So, the Yehudim have the Torah, and they have the Spirit. Yes, the Spirit, which the church teaches, only enters you after you've received Christ as Messiah. That's non-biblical. How did Samson have the Spirit fall on him? Or David have the Spirit fall on him? Unless you realize that the internalization of Christ as Messiah, if you were to walk in his ways, 1 Peter 2:21, is the adoption of a heart condition and a mind condition that allow you to keep the Torah to the best of your ability, aka righteousness, Luke 1 verse 6. What does it mean to have Christ indwelt in you? You do not sin. Sin is transgression of the law. Shall we sin all the more so that grace may abound? No, Yah forbid. But Samson, David, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Shamgar, old dude with a pointy stick. Shall we continue? All had the Spirit prior to Yah being physically manifested as Mashiach. So the Yehudim also have two legs of this three-legged stool. They have the Spirit, they have the Torah, but they don't recognize Mashiach. But behold, I come swiftly to reward each man according to his works. See, and that this gets into the concept of heaven and hell. The rabbit holes are deep today, my friends. When you die, if you believe in Christ, you do not go up into heaven to hang out with God. Your body dies. The soul is eternal. Asterisk. That's why Yeshua says, do not fear those who can kill the body, but fear him, Yahweh, who can destroy the soul. You go into a holding pattern. And then, at the first resurrection, we know all who are dead in Christ rise. And at the second resurrection, the remainder all rise unto judgment. Some who will be found favorable, some who will not be, unto their shame, as the word puts it. You will be judged. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess. The good knees, the bad knees, the good tongues, the bad tongues. And then those who have been found righteous, and how do we know what righteousness is? Blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah. But I didn't know what they were. Proverbs 24:12. Read it. Understanding and accountability track together. But see, the Torah is so basic that even Shaul of Tarsus in the New Testament talks about there are heathens that are doing most of the Torah because it's basic stuff. Don't steal. Don't covet. Don't murder. Love Yah with everything that you've got. Basic stuff. And then at that judgment, those who are found righteous enter into the kingdom. Those that aren't, they're destroyed forever. They are thrown into the lake of fire burning with sulfur along with the enemy. And that soul, that spark of Yah, is destroyed forever. Deep rabbit holes today. So, who is this that's outside the temple? Who are these sojourners in the midst of Israel? Those that aren't bad people, but don't necessarily know the truth, the way, the truth, the life yet. Back to the millennial kingdom. What are we doing? We are serving Yah, teaching Torah, learning from Mashiach, worshiping. And worship doesn't mean you put on your favorite Sunday morning Christian music playlist, although it can at times look like that. Abraham, when he's going up the mountain to slaughter Isaac, says, "Stay here, I'm going up the mountain to worship." Worship is the acts of obedience of Yahweh. Yeah. Worship is the acts of obedience to Yahweh. And that's what we will be doing, worshiping in the millennial kingdom. And there will be those who can be won, who will be won by our presence and Yeshua's presence and Yah's presence. So who are these? And it shall be that you divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves for the strangers who sojourn in your midst and who bear children among you. And they shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. You could also interpret this as meaning those of us who are grafted in by Mashiach. We are strangers to the land, aren't we? But we're also part of the family. This is a big old family reunion, y'all. Like, a significant portion of my dad's side of the family is from Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And there are parts of Kansas when there are family reunions on that side of the family. I've never been to this little tiny dot on the map before, but these are still my family. They're still my people. So am I a stranger sojourning amongst them? See, they're native born there, but I'm still part of the family. For the strangers who sojourn in your midst and who bear children among you, and they shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. With you they have an inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel. So when you're grafted in, right? How does one get an inheritance in Israel if they're not part of the family? Because it's promised to the seed of Abraham. When you're grafted into the tree of life, Romans 11, you're all the way grafted in. Remember, the root bears the branch, not the other way around. And it shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger sojourns, there you give him his inheritance, declares the Master Yahuwah. Now, another interesting point is, what is the purpose of the Gog and the Magog war? Well, there's multiple. It's for belief in Mashiach. It's for belief in Yahuwah. It's for the restoration of Israel. It's to remove the enemies of Israel from the battlefield. But I also think it can be interpreted as, in part, a depopulation strategy, because this area that's described here is far larger than the current nation state of Israel. It's the land of Canaan that was originally promised to Abraham, which today is Israel and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt and blah, 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 blah. Well, where did all those people go? Well, remember Gog and Magog? All those people that come up against Israel and are destroyed? It's going to be much easier to go into that land and claim it as an inheritance if all the men have been wiped out by Mashiach. Sorry, 26 minutes for a short chapter of Yehezkel. I apologize. Let's see if we can put a bow on this thing. Ezekiel 48. And these are the names of the tribe, from the north end along the way to Hetland at the entrance of Hamath, to Hatzar, Anan, the border of Damasek, northward by the side of Hamath, from its east side to its west side, Dan. And by the border of Dan, from the east side to the west, Asher 1. And by the border of Asher, from the east side to the west, Naphtali 1. And by the border of Naphtali, from the east side to the west, Manasseh 1. And by the border of Manasseh, from the east side to the west, Ephraim 1. Sons of Joseph. And by the border of Ephraim, from the east side to the west, Reuben 1. And by the border of Reuben, from the east side to the west, Judah 1. And by the border of Yehuda, Judah, from the east side to the west, is the contribution which you offer up, 25,000 cubits in width, and its length is the same as one of the portions from the east side to the west, with the set-apart place in its midst. So that is the portion of land to be for the city of Jerusalem, the temple. Why is Dan here? Because we don't see Dan numbered amongst the 12 tribes. We see Levi in the place of Dan. And also, interestingly, Joseph is named in... There is no tribe of Joseph. There's the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Ephraim. But Joseph is named in Revelation. And Dan and Ephraim, see, it's Joseph and Manasseh that are named in Revelation 7. Dan and Ephraim are not. And there's a lot of, to this day, after 2,000 years of study, there's no consensus on why Dan and Ephraim are not named. Other than the children of Dan, when they went into the promised land, did not find their land suitable, their inheritance suitable. And they didn't settle in the land. And because they didn't settle in the land, they fell into false worship and idolatry. And Yah discontinued with them. Ephraim, where did they get the idols from? They stole the idols from Ephraim. What's Ephraim doing with idols? Whoa. So we don't see them particularly named in the book of Revelation in the sealing of the forehead. Yet here they are in Ezekiel's vision of end times. What are they doing here? And they have an inheritance in the land. They're also named on the gates going in and out of the city of Jerusalem. So maybe, and again, I'm spitballing here because like I like to refer to Ezekiel as the book of befuddlement. I don't have this all figured out, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But is it possible that Dan is there in his inheritance? He's not sealed in the forehead at the time of Revelation, but there's a process of restoration, as there always is for the Father's people. There's always a process for restoration. So many people knock the Levitical priesthood and the sacrificial offerings without realizing that it's a substitutional sacrifice. It is a method of sacrifice to create atonement at one with Yah. Sacrifices always cost you something. And maybe, during this period, Dan gets his poop in a group. Maybe Dan and Ephraim, as tribes of Yah, tribes of Israel, realize they teshuvah, they repent, they turn from their wicked ways during this end times chaos. Because they are named on the gates going in and out of Jerusalem in end times. Sorry, flipped something out of my pocket. But yet we see Dan here in Ezekiel and Yehezkel. So if I'm of the tribe of Dan, which I'm not saying I am, but if I was, I could find some comfort in that. Hey guys, we are there. We should probably get our poop in a group and quit worshiping idols and turning our back on Yah. Because idolatry is spiritual whoring. It's the Yehudim have 3 levels of abomination, and the greatest of which is idolatry. It's in their mind, again, informed by the Babylonian Talmud, in their mind, it's irreversible. The lowest of which is eating things that one should not eat. Still an abomination. But again, this is doctrines and dogmas. Show me in the Bible where it says that. An abomination is an abomination, like sin is sin, right? But Dan's transgression was idolatry. And idolatry is cheating on Yah. Proverbs, beware the strange woman, idolatry. So idolatry is spiritual whoring. Which is why we need to be careful what we bow down to, what we worship. And again, worship is acts of obedience to Yah. Be careful what you make idols out of in today's day and age in your life, because it got Dan separated from Yah to the point that we don't see him sealed in the forehead in Revelation 7. But we do see Dan and Ephraim here in Ezekiel 48. Why? I wish I had a great answer for that. And as much as the research as I've done on that, nobody has a great answer for that. This is going to be one of those things that will be revealed to us when Mashiach returns. I have so many questions. But it goes back to Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret matters belong to Elohim, but to us what has been revealed to us and our children to do all the words of this Torah forever. We have enough to know what to do to not become Dan, to not become Ephraim. We'll ask Yeshua. I'll ask Yeshua when I see him, hey, what's up with Dan and Ephraim? How did you guys get back here? What's going on? Shall we continue? Verse 10. And of these is the set-apart contribution for the priests. On the north 25,000 cubits, and on the west 10,000 cubits in width, and on the east 10,000 cubits in width, and on the south 25,000 in length. And the set-apart place of Yahweh shall be in its midst, in the middle of the area that's set apart as a portion to the Levites, the priests. For the priests of the sons of Zadok, righteous, who are set apart, who did guard my charge, who did not go astray when the children of Israel went astray, as the Levites went astray. So the Levites never got an inheritance of land, but they did get a set-apart portion around the temple that was for them and for their sustenance. And again, practically, if people are bringing voluntary contributions, voluntary offerings to the Levites back in the day, that would have been ruminants, animals. Okay, well, if you can't eat all these things right now, what do you do with them? You put them in the field to graze. Ergo, one must have a field. So this contribution shall be to them from the contribution of the land a most set apart place by the border of the Levites. And alongside the border of the priests, the Levites have 25,000 cubits in length and 10,000 in width. Its entire length is 25,000, and its width 10,000. And they do not sell any of it, nor exchange it, nor transfer this best part of the land, for it is set apart to Yahuwah. And the 5,000 cubits in width that is left, facing the 25,000, is for common use by the city, for dwellings, and open land, and the city shall be in its midst. So these are like rings of an onion. You got the temple in the middle, then you've got the portion to the Levites, then you've got the city proper around that, and all of this is part of the inheritance of the prince. So those borders, and then outside of that, next layer of the onion out from that, you have the inheritance of the 12 tribes. And these are its measurements. The north side 4,500 cubits, on the south side 4,500 cubits, and the east side 4,500 cubits, and the west side 4,500 cubits. And the open land of the city shall be to the north 250 cubits, and to the south 250 cubits, and to the east 250 cubits, and to the west 250 cubits. This is a buffer zone. And the rest of the length alongside the contribution of the set-apart portion is 10,000 cubits to the east and 10,000 to the west, and it shall be alongside the contribution of the set-apart portion, and its increase, we use this land, shall be for food for the workers of the city. So it's an agricultural production, this 10,000 cubit border in between the buffer zone and the city. And the workers of the city from all the tribes of Israel shall till it. Hope you guys are good at planting potatoes. I'm not, no matter how much I try. My vegetable agriculture is C plus at best. Much better at animal agriculture. I don't know. Maybe I'm a Levite. I'm better with cows and sheep and deer, honestly, than I am at making kale grow. But, carnivore diet, it's a thing. The entire contribution is 25,000 cubits by 25,000 cubits 4 square. You are to offer up the set-apart contribution with the possession of the city. And the rest is for the prince, on one side, on the other of the set-apart contribution, and on the possession of the city, facing the 25,000 cubits of the set-apart contribution, as far as the eastern border, and westward, facing the 25,000 as far as the western border, alongside the portions of the prince. The prince, remember the prince we've talked about, potentially this being David. Yeshua's high priest. Maybe it's Yeshua, but maybe it's David. Maybe it's a different prince. Maybe it's somebody coming in the spirit of David, like John the Baptist. Yochanan the Immerser came in the spirit of Elijah. Another question I have for Yeshua. And the set-apart contribution and the set-apart place of the house, the temple, shall be in its midst. So the possession of the Levites and the possession of the city are in the midst of what belongs to the prince. Between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin, it belongs to the prince. So the prince is responsible for, protects the Levites, the city, the temple. I just kind of have to foot stomp this one. Men, inside the possession of the prince are the Levites and the city, the people, the common folk, and the temple. So inside of your borders is the worship of Yah, the care of the common folk, and the temple, the reverence of the set-apart place of Yahweh your Elohim. The prince is responsible for, the prince protects the Levites, the people of the city, and the worship of Yah. Men, I'm looking at you. The prince protects the Levites, those in service to Yah, the common folk, and the reverence, the worship of Yah via the temple. That convicts me. I hope that's something you receive as well. So the possession of the Levites and the possession of the city are in the midst of what belongs to the prince. Between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin, it belongs to the prince. As for the rest of the tribes, from the east side to the west side, Benjamin, 1. And from the border of Benjamin, from the east side to the west side, Shimon, Simeon, 1. And by the border of Simeon, from the east side to the west side, Issachar, 1. And the border of Issachar from the east side to the west side, Zebulun, 1. And by the border of Zebulun from the east side to the west side, Gad, 1. And by the border of Gad on the south side towards the south, the border shall be from Tamar to the waters of Meribah by Kadesh, along the Wadi to the great sea. This is the land which you divide by lot as an inheritance among the tribes of Israel, and these are their portions, declares the Master Yahuwah. So, this sounds awful like what was supposed to happen when the Israelites went into the land at the end of Deuteronomy and in the beginning of Joshua. And it didn't quite happen. But now, under the hand of Yah, with the leadership of Mashiach, we have the completion of a promise made to the descendants of Abraham now taking place millennia later. Because Yah's timeline is not our timeline. And that inheritance includes the stranger who sojourns in your midst to be treated as the native born of Israel. That's a huge promise for us, the Gentile believer in Mashiach, who's grafted into the tree of life Israel by the blood of the Son, Messiah, according to Romans 11, verse 16, by the hand of Shaul of Tarsus. And these are the exits of the city, the gates of the city, according to the names of the tribes of Israel. On the north side, measuring 4,500 cubits. The 3 gates northward, 1 gate for Reuben, 1 gate for Judah, 1 gate for Levi. On the east side, 4,500 cubits, 3 gates, 1 gate for Joseph, not Manasseh, not Ephraim, 1 gate for Joseph, 1 gate for Benjamin, 1 gate for Dan. See, there's 12 gates. Levi gets a gate. And when you include Levi in the sons of Israel, sons of Jacob, you end up with 13. So the tribe of Joseph, which is 2 tribes, Joseph and Manasseh, here, mathematically, they've been combined down to 1 tribe, Joseph, so that Levi can get his own gate. Why? I don't know. Because Yah said so. And sometimes faith is simply taking what Yah says at face value and going, yes, sir. How many times have you yelled at your kids and said, because I said so? Is that not a good enough reason for a child to be obedient to a father? And sometimes I'm sure that child wants an explanation. I know I did when I was little. But sometimes, because dad said so, is good enough. It's especially good enough when you are lower than whale dung, like I am, and he's the creator of the universe. Why? Because dad said so. That's why. If you can perfectly explain your faith, is it even faith anymore? It is the glory of Elohim to hide a matter and the glory of kings to search it out. Yup. But he's still Elohim. And even if you are functioning as a king here in this material plane, you are still subordinate to him. Yeshua is King of Kings. You're still subordinate to Yeshua. And dad said, this is what the gates will be like. Levi gets a gate, Joseph gets a gate. But I don't understand that with my little mind. If you did understand everything there was to understand of Yah, who's the Elohim now? If I can perfectly explain him, who's in charge, me or him? Spoiler alert, he is. And on the east side, 4,500 cubits, 3 gates, 1 gate for Joseph, 1 for Benjamin, and 1 for Dan. It's interesting, Joseph and Benjamin were daughters of the same woman, Rachel, and they were close. Read Genesis, 38 through 50. And 1 for Dan. Remember, Ephraim and Dan, they kind of go back a ways with that whole idol worship thing. And they've got little brother Benjamin in the middle. Maybe Benjamin is being a good witness for the 2 of these. Or maybe it's a sign of the restoration of Yah. I'm going to put these guys together. The younger brother and the 2 disobedient brothers together. Very much so like the prodigal son, isn't it? You have returned to your proper station in life, and I'm glad that you are here. And on the south side, measuring 4,500 cubits, 3 gates, 1 for Simeon, 1 for Issachar, and 1 for Zebulun. And on the west side, 4,500 cubits, with their 3 gates, 1 for Gad, 1 for Asher, 1 gate for Naphtali. By the way, Revelation 21, verse 30-ish, lists all of the gates. And they line up. All of the gates in the New Jerusalem, the New Heaven, in John's vision, in the end of the book. All around 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that day is Yahweh is there. And as we can see in Revelation 20, 21, 22, Yahweh is there. Yahweh is the temple. They don't even need light in the city because the eminence glowing from Yah illuminates everything. And that, my dear friends, is the completion, praise Yah, of the book of befuddlement, Ezekiel 48. We will do Daniel next, Yah willing. I don't know what will befall me within the next week or so, but I am, while studying the completion of Ezekiel, have also been studying the beginning of Daniel, and Yah's will be done. We'll jump into that soon. Will it be next Friday? Maybe. Will it be 4 Fridays from now? I don't know. Yah's will be done. But we will do Daniel next. Thanks for being here. I appreciate your comments. The productive ones. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.